And so that it just ties into entrepreneurship perfectly. There's so many tie-ins when it comes to cycling, but
Yeah.
finding drafting partners like in the entrepreneurial journey, sometimes you're just beaten down. And, the science shows the number one factor to well being are relationships. In a home care company, or really most any company, it's more important to learn how to keep your people than to find them.
Mm,
Because if you have a revolving door, the cost of that turnover is exponential. Learning how to keep them is extremely important. And so
mhm.
creating cultures of retention is paramount.
This morning we had our team huddle. We have people online, and everyone says what they're grateful for, and then we do numbers. So we do like our on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your energy, what's your commitment, and
Oh,
what's your
wow.
focus.
I love
And
that.
so,
We call it the 24 character strengths in positive psychology, but things like love, leadership, spirituality, love of learning, things like that are part of those 24 character strengths. What if we could create habits in our lives that have those things running in the background unconsciously?
hello everybody, welcome to Unreasonable Health, and I'm your host Regan Archibald. Today I've got my friend Aaron Marcum, and Aaron, you're going to find very fascinating. Not only does he have, a wealth of knowledge, he's got a master's of applied positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, where he studied under Dr. Martin Segelman,
Yep.
the father of positive psychology. And then what Aaron's done is for the last 20 years, he's scaled businesses, received top industry awards, recognizing his leadership vision and service. But he's also created a brand new book called Thrive, which we're going to talk about today. And it covers the 8 entrepreneurs' laws to accelerate financial freedom while creating the good life. And it's out now by Ethos Collective Publishing. And not only that, but Aaron actually lives right where I grew up. And so Aaron
Yeah.
and I are from Rexburg, Idaho, hometown. So Aaron, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here, Reagan. I appreciate the opportunity and excited to just kind of go back and forth on
Yeah, so
this.
this is it's been a journey for you. And tell me why, like, I mean, you've been in the home health service and industry for your entire career.
Yeah,
And
pretty much.
then you decided like, hey, I'm going to go and get my master's in applied positive psychology. What was the shift? Why that? Were
Yeah.
you negative at the time or what? You seem like a positive guy all the time.
I don't know. Yeah, my kids may not agree with that, but yeah, in the healthcare home care space, as you know, there's a lot of challenges. A lot of challenges in home care, a lot of stress that comes with this, and so working with entrepreneurs in that space for the last 22 years, honestly, 22 years in that
Wow.
space, seeing the burnout, seeing the stress levels, even for myself, as I write about in my book, is that it wasn't until about 2015, 2016 that I started really making some positive changes in my own life. I was like 25 pounds heavier than I was when I started working with you all a few months ago, even,
Yeah.
and so there's pictures of me floating out there and during that era that I'm quite embarrassed to even look at sometimes. But
Who is that guy, right?
yeah, who is that guy? It's not me, and it's really it's fun though to see that journey, and that's how most of those entrepreneurs, many of those entrepreneurs, live their lives. Is that there's constant fires, there's constant stressors that filling shifts, and a care professional doesn't show up, and then the senior's left without care. I mean, it's just a lot of stress there. So I was fascinated with how can I help these entrepreneurs thrive and find flourishing in their business and in their lives. And I came across a book in 2017 when had started my journey, was making some good changes in my life. I got into cycling back then. In 2016 was my first year. I did the 200-mile bike race there, Logan to Utah, at Lodija.
Loaded
And
job.
so I was making these really good positive changes. And I came across a book called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Acor. And it
Mm.
was my first introduction into positive psychology. And I was fascinated with this science of well being. And then fast forward a few years later, I had a decent exit of my current company, Home Care Pulse, and decided to go into that program, UPenn, number one program in the world for that field, studying under Martin Seligman, who's the father of positive psychology and one of the greatest psychologists of all time. And it was transformational for me. I was a better father, husband as a result of that. I think my kids saw some real positive changes for me. But then I really learned my whole intent was to see, okay, how do entrepreneurs thrive? Why do they thrive? And why do some don't? And kind of what's the science behind all that? And that's where, that's how the book was launched after that. Is I was like, I really want to write about, these 8 laws that I discovered during that program. And that's kind of where I ended up. And so it's been an awesome journey. That's the Cliff Notes version of it.
Wow. Well, and
Yeah.
we're gonna dive deep into it because, I think a lot of people who listen to this, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a, stressed out mom or grandma or whatever is going on in your life, Aaron's going to share with you some principles that are timeless and that they sweep across any person's individual life because I think all of us have been at that place of burnout and overwhelm. But in the thing that I found interesting in what you talk about, and you actually shared this with me a little bit when we were hanging out. Aaron and I are in a strategic coach together, and so we were able to spend some time. Just a couple weeks ago. I'll see you again on Wednesday, right? You'll be at
Yeah.
the yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm really
Yeah.
excited. But Aaron, his wife is also a cyclist, and one of the things when Aaron and I started working together, he's like, I just need to be able to keep up with my wife, and that was kind of one of his main motivations for getting into health. And so, but one of the cool stories is when you did your first loaded jaw, you just like you hit a wall, you bonked on that
Yeah.
last leg, and so tell us a little bit about how your wife was. She helped draft. She was your drafter, I think is what it's called. And then, how does that apply to entrepreneurism and
Yeah.
kind of what you've seen out there?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it was my third Lotus yacht. It was
Excuse
20.
me.
Yeah. No, no, that's great. I'm glad you remembered it. But yeah, in 2021, it was my third one, and I had just really hit a wall. It's 200 miles. I was on the last leg, and my wife, she does the relay, women's relay. In fact, last year, that I have to brag about her team, and these are ladies. Her team, average age is probably 50, 45 to 50. Well,
Yeah.
they got number one relay team, women's relay team, beat all these
Wow.
younger teams out. It was pretty awesome.
Wow.
They're beasts. But anyway, she just finished her relay in 2021. I had what they call bonked, where there was just no way I was going to finish in my current state. And she's
Mm,
like, I'm going to get in front of you. You're just going to just stay behind me. And there's a rule of drafting, or there's a concept of drafting and biking, where if you can get behind someone's tire, just right behind it, it saves about 33% of your energy. And
sheesh.
that's
Is
what
it
she
that much?
that much,
33%?
yeah. Just one person. And just think about an entire peloton. Like if you could get behind a
Jeez.
bunch of riders, it's
Yep.
incredible. You feel it right away when you get behind somebody.
Yeah.
And there was it's down the Hoback Canyon, between Alpine, Wyoming. You're familiar with the
Oh
area,
yeah.
and Jackson Hole. And so the wind was coming down that canyon. And so it made a huge difference. So much of a difference that I finished that race 45 minutes faster than my previous time. In
Oh,
fact, I
that
made up so much ground in that one leg. It was incredible. And so, and that's the power of drafting, and the power of what we also call breakaways is like when you can distance yourself from the pack, or what your previous time was, your whatever that is. And so that it just ties into entrepreneurship perfectly. There's so many tie-ins when it comes to cycling. But
Yeah.
finding drafting partners like in the entrepreneurial journey, sometimes you're just beaten down. And the science shows the number one connection, or the one number one factor to well-being are relationships.
Mm.
And so if you can find those relationships, mentors on the professional level, invest in relationships at the personal level, then your well-being will thrive. And find those drafting partners so that when you are behind or you are struggling, that you can get behind them and they're happy to lead. And sometimes that's you, right? That's sometimes as the entrepreneur, you've got to lead others, into the vision, there's just so many tie-ins. And so I tie that in quite a bit in the book. I'm grateful for my wife, for her willingness to sacrifice. She said she rode the entire 47 miles so that I could, finish that race. So pretty
Man,
cool.
isn't that cool? So,
Yeah.
when in your career, I mean, the home health industry is complicated in and of itself because you're dealing with a lot of elderly people who have very specific needs, and some of those needs can be, like, hey, I need help cooking, or mobility is a big one. But then it can be where there's an acute crisis. But how do you guys deal with some of the crises in your industry?
Well, unfortunately, sometimes it's not in a healthy way, right? Is that there's constant, like, their ability to get on their business. We use that term a lot in strategic coach, is creating that, what Dan Sullivan calls that self-managing. It's definitely hard to create a self-multiplying business, let alone
Yeah.
the self-managing business. And so because they're constantly in it, evenings, weekends. I'm a partner in a home care company out of Raleigh, and when I first found Jen, she had created a decent business that was really starting to grow in the home care space. But man, her weekends, her evenings, uh, she didn't have them. Her family rarely saw her, and that's usually how they deal with it. Is they put themselves in the driver's seat constantly, even on call. And so how I prefer to deal with it is is focusing on the people, and who are the right people to help share the load and to create some obviously drafting, as we're talking about drafting partners in your company, and getting, investing in that financially to bring in the right people. And so that's what we did with Jen in a couple of years, and she accelerated her growth from being a small kind of boutique home care agency to 6 times the enterprise value within about a year and a half, 2 years. And the cool thing is, during that 2 years, she bought a lake house, and she has her weekends and her evenings back. She grew while she spent less time in her business.
Um,
And that's the power of, like, that's how I want to see the industry change and evolve, is to get the concept of the who, not how
yeah.
concept that Dan often talks to us about. And so that's where I hope to push the industry further into that concept, is find the right who, so that, and not worry about the how as much. They'll figure it out.
And for those of us who, we're concerned about our aging parents, or maybe you have people in a, home health care operation, imagine if you're working with a company where the founder or the entrepreneur is burned out. I mean, it's gonna trickle down. And so this is the work you're doing now is critical, because I know you created a company to capture all the data and to help organize and run the business better, which is phenomenal. But now you're going to the next level, and you're hosting workshops and masterminds, and you're really teaching these 8 laws that you've learned in your 2+ decades, so that people can actually, you can use a drafter when you need to, but at certain times you're going to, you want a refreshed entrepreneur who, like Jen, she comes out of the lake house and she can go right in front of the pack and say, hey, here's where we're going, and get behind me, let me get some momentum generated, and then she can slip back, and so
Yeah, I love that.
so maybe we could talk about kind of this, kind of the mentorship that you're offering, and why that's important, because I think that's probably one of the biggest gifts that happens is when people sell their business, sometimes they just leave the industry entirely. But what you've done is you've said, you know what, I'm going to bring all my skills, my capabilities, I'm going to double down and actually serve the industry in probably better ways than you have in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. And that wasn't totally clear to me until fairly recently, where I'd written this book for the general entrepreneur. And I talk about the home care space in that book, but overall, every entrepreneur can benefit from this that's dealing with stress or burnout can benefit from the book Entre Thrive. But as I've been working on the book and realizing that I was, when you feel like your work isn't done in an industry, it's kind of how I've been feeling. Like I can provide so much more to that industry than I've even provided. And frankly, the last company that I 10x'd in that industry, it was transform the industry when it comes to data and performance, quality measurements, like quality service. We are like the JD Powers of home care in that industry, and they still are. And so having another, like, just wanting to go back in that space and create another 10x company that can help elevate that industry excites me, and so that's really exciting to me to see, okay, now we can take what we did before and just take it to whole new levels. Totally different concept though. Like Home Care Pulse continue to do what they're doing. Mine's going to be really focused on the visionary, the entrepreneurs, and the right hands, and get them to
Mhm.
elevate their companies from a well-being standpoint and get their lives back.
Yeah.
Dan, all we, mentioned, because we share the same coach, Dan,
Yep.
right? Dan Sullivan. Those four freedoms, getting
Yeah.
those four freedoms, the freedom of time, money, relationships, and purpose, getting those back in their lives so that they can run a business that improves the quality of care for those that they are taking care of. These
Yeah.
seniors, very vulnerable population right now. So,
And the crazy thing is, is there's just a complete imbalance in the amount of people who were born versus the baby boomers, where we've got this like population that's disproportionate to the workforce, this
yes.
elderly population. And so,
Yeah.
how are you solving that problem? I mean, this is one way is like, hey, don't burn out. We need you in the game. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm focusing on 5 areas to help solve part of that. The second area is a real big one, important one. But the first one is we call it think. Like a home care agency isn't going to grow beyond the way the people in the company are thinking, especially the owner. And so helping them using positive psychology, the 8 laws, getting them clear on their vision, helping them create creative spaces where they can create and grow their company and treat it like a real business and so forth. And so incorporating those 8 laws into the way they think better. But the second one is we call it keep, because in a home care company, or really most any company, it's more important to learn how to keep your people than to find them.
mm,
Because if you have a revolving door, the cost of that turnover is exponential.
yeah,
And solving the problem, here's the challenge: is you have more 85 plus year olds than you have 4-year olds in the
yeah.
world. So we have a birthing problem. People are trying to hire people who haven't been born yet.
Oh,
They're
wow.
not
Yeah.
even born. And so when we do find people that have been born that are ready to work and they're the right people, learning how to keep them is extremely important. And
Mm,
so creating cultures of retention is paramount, like super important. And again, using positive psychology, the science of well-being, to help create those more positive cultures that retain the best people is pretty critical. Once you have those two things, the think part and the keep part kind of down to where you're really soaring in those areas, then accelerated growth is possible. You
got
can't
it.
really accelerate if you have this revolving door of people just coming and going in your business. That's any business. That
Yeah.
concept doesn't just apply to home care companies. That's any business. Once you get those two things figured out, then acceleration, I think, is really possible. So that's our focus.
And
with this
what are some of the
program.
things you've learned about culture? Like, how do you foster a healthy culture? Because I know a lot of times people in the home health agency, they're going to, people's houses who are they're depressed, they have very significant chronic diseases. I mean, they may be on their, their last leg of life. So, what have you found that's helpful so that you can apply that keep principle?
Yeah. So there's a concept out there. I love this concept. It's basically a phrase. Retention starts at hire, right?
Mm,
Is that hiring based upon, first and foremost, is the entrepreneur knowing what we call your guiding truths, like what is important to you and aligning those guiding truths. Like one of my guiding truths is my mind is at peace. Another one is my actions reflect character. My hands
mm,
provide service. So aligning your core values in your company with those guiding truths and then hiring people based upon your core values, I think is really important, because if you're hiring people who don't live your core values as a company, and you've got to be clear on what those are, then they're most likely to leave. They're not going to feel connected to what you're really trying to do as an organization. And so that's really important. So that's where it starts. But once you get them in and you get the right people in, it's building a culture of consistent recognition that
mm,
ties back to those core values so they know what kind of behavior you're looking for. And so getting very specific about that, and where it's not just random, like random recognition, random acts of kindness, I think are good, but you got to formalize your program and what you're trying to create, in your organization. Um, and then helping them tie to the vision. So if I'm in a sales seat, I want to know why my position is so important to the overall vision to the company. And so helping your team always come back to why is what they're doing, or the roles in which they play within the company, how does that tie to the vision?
mm.
So that they get buy-in and they're constantly being reminded of their why and why they're doing what they're doing. I think is really, really important. There's a lot of just little tactics, little things that you can do, helping your even journaling within the
Oh,
team.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does that
Creating.
work?
Yeah. So within a team, I did this at my last organization, is really focusing on, in positive psychology, we call it the three blessings exercise, but it's really writing down. It's a simple thing. It's those three wins within strategic coach,
Yeah.
but also forward thinking. So they're thinking about, okay, what were my wins today? And doing those positive focuses within the organization. So before every meeting, you're talking about your three wins from this past week, but also three wins that are going to happen the next day, or that you're going to happen. And again, this is again attributing back to not just strategic coach, but something that we even learned in my program, the power of, it's called the three blessings exercise.
Wow.
And it's this forward thinking. Science backs it up that when you're forward thinking, you're thinking about, okay, this is what's happened. I'm grateful for this, but I'm also grateful for what's about to happen. Like today, this is what's going to happen. And writing those three things down,
Mm,
I think are pretty powerful. And then being vulnerable as a team to share those things, that what you're looking forward to, today I'm looking forward to this. I have a call coming up this afternoon I'm really looking forward to. Those kinds of like vulnerabilities and communication within the team creates that synergy, and frankly, science backs it all up. So it enhances our well-being. So
wow.
yeah.
So we have a ritual with my team, and I don't know where I got it from. It just blended a bunch of things, but gratitude is really starting, like the starting principle for everything is gratitude. Then it's like the opposite of entitlement is gratitude. So I was like, let's just open up every day with gratitude. So we
Yeah.
go around the room. Like this morning, we had our team huddle. We have people online, and everyone says what they're grateful for, and then we do numbers. So we do like our on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your energy, what's your commitment, and
Oh,
what's your
wow.
focus.
I love
And
that.
And so then we can see like if someone's like, man, my energy's so low, and then they can express like, hey, my kid was up all night, and so cut me some slack today. And so we have some
Yeah.
compassion amongst each other. And
Oh
then,
my gosh, I
you
love
know,
that.
if
Yeah.
someone's at 10 out of 10 on focus, it's like great. And then we talk about, all right, what are we accomplishing today? And then we just go through the schedule. But um,
That's a high trust exercise. That's pretty amazing that you're able to do that and have that much trust among the team to be vulnerable and say, I don't have my A game today because this happened last night. I love that. Right. And that's awesome. That's really cool.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's funny because we get 10 out of 10s on commitment no matter what. Someone shows up and they're like, my energy is like a 2. I don't know if I'm getting sick or what it is, but I'm going to stick in this as long. It's actually really cool to see because then the team, like, we're all healers. And so it
Yeah.
naturally it gravitates towards our desire to go help. I love that my hands are here to serve, or what's that? What
My hands provide service.
Yeah, my hands provide service. Like that's what we want to do. So everyone like
Yeah.
comes in and instead of like, hey, why is Aaron in such a bad mood today? It's like, well, from the get-go why you're in a bad mood. Then you can kind of structure your day around it. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if that applies to positive psychology, but it
Oh,
sounds like it sure
100%.
does.
That's again, I've mentioned the term high trust exercise. Like we talk about this in positive psychology, is that high trust exercises are when we can be very vulnerable with the group that we're involved in, whether it's personally or professionally, and do things that take those relationships to a new level. And
Yeah.
I would say that's definitely a high trust exercise where you trust people in the room that you can share these things that happened last night or whatever it might be. That's kudos to you guys. I mean, that's not every team can do those kinds of high trust exercises like that and be that vulnerable. That's pretty cool, that you're able to do that.
Oh, it's great. And I love how you help them kind of future cast. Like, what is it tomorrow what are the
Yeah.
3 things? Because then the subconscious mind goes and looks for those things that it wants to accomplish. So
Yeah.
brilliant. What is, as far as positive psychology, how do they describe the subconscious versus the conscious mind? Was there any discussion or research on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so I call it it's the fifth, actually the sixth law, habits, entrepreneurial habits. And so Wendy Wood did some great work, that book, Good Habits, Bad Habits. And so in their research, she's a well-known psychologist. In her research, they established that 43% of everything we do is unconscious,
Wow.
right? And so, what if, and I make this point in the book, what if we could take things like, we call it the 24 character strengths in positive psychology, but things like love, leadership, spirituality,
Mm,
um, the love of learning, things like that are part of those 24 character strengths. What if we could create habits in our lives that have those things running in the background unconsciously? We
mm,
first have to make them conscious. But then over time, as we're setting up the right triggers, the right format, the right behaviors, then we can have those run in the background. For example, one of the character strengths is love. And it's not one of my top 5 character strengths. Like you can take a test if you go to viacharacter.org. You can take a
okay.
test, an assessment, and it'll identify your top 5 character strengths. Well, love isn't one of mine, but you can always look at one of the ones you want and say, I want that more in my life. Because I haven't been super great. I have 6 kids. I'm not super great at reaching out to them on a regular basis. And so I've set up on my watch a little trigger, a little alarm that reminds me to text one of my kids every day.
No way. How
And
cool.
yeah, yeah. So just so I connect with at least one of them on a daily basis.
Yeah.
That just a simple thing. It was super easy to do. And I've been doing it. And now it's starting to where I don't even need my alarm as much. And it's creating that unconscious habit. I'm getting closer. I'm not quite there,
Yep.
but where
Okay.
I'm just, okay, I'm going to text them. It's just happening automatically. So so yeah, we've done in the world of positive, excuse me, positive psychology. we do a lot of work in the unconscious versus conscious habits that the difference that each of them make. So yeah, definitely ties, especially for an entrepreneur.
And what's the biggest difference? I mean, because negative people can be just as successful, like material wise, as positive people, right? You and I have been around people where you're like, man, well, I have anywhere where I'm like, they're 10 times more successful than me, but I don't want their life. They're negative about
Yeah.
everything. They're always like, the next shoe's always going to drop. But what is the benefit? I mean, that you found in studying applied positive psychology, maybe some benefits you didn't expect to receive from that
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, we call it the lie of the either or. I talk about it in the book. Is that the lie of the either or is many entrepreneurs believe that as long as I push myself professionally, eventually my personal well-being will catch up. And so they just go all in professionally. They don't believe they can thrive in both their personal and professional lives. And so we've seen those people, like they just grind it out and often burning bridges along the way with their relationships, with partnerships. But because they're grinding it out, they found some level of success. Sometimes, exponential levels of success because you can be successful even if you're a negative person burning all those bridges along the way. But the problem with that is their health,
Yeah.
their happiness. They're not happy. They're not living their best lives, and their relationships are usually suffering all around them. You can see all these fires going on all around them. There's certainly people in history that we can think of that lived their lives that way and often exited this life a little early because they didn't take care of themselves.
Yeah.
So that's but when I from a personal standpoint, excuse me, I'll take a drink of water here.
Sure.
From a personal standpoint, in 2016 when I started biking and started
Yeah.
investing in my personal well-being a lot more, my company had this hockey stick growth from that year on. Is that, and my team will tell you, when Aaron really let go, stopped trying to
Mhm.
control the outcome all the time, really leaned into being positive and all those things, and took care of himself from a personal level, the business took off. So
Wow.
on the flip side is that as you invest in your personal well-being, often the professional well-being will follow, not the other way around typically.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah,
How
yeah.
powerful is that? And I think I've seen so many cases of that because the primary people we work with are entrepreneurs as well,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen that time and time again where when somebody gets healthier, their business just grows,
Yeah,
and sometimes that growth can be incredibly explosive. But it's the point where I have one of my clients who doesn't go to work until noon now, and he used to be like a 70, 80-hour work week guy and just like so driven. And he's like, this is gonna like, and this was a couple of years ago we started working together. He's like, this is like a part-time job. I'm like, yeah, you do have to actually put the same intention on your health as you do your business. And so he took that to heart. And he's not focused on his health from like 6 in the morning to 12, but pretty much it's all about replenishing himself. And he says, I'm more
yeah,
productive for those 4 or 5 hours I go into the office than I was working the 10, 12-hour days because he actually just takes time to get clear on what he needs to do as a leader. And then he's kind of like, Warren Buffett only makes 2 or 3 decisions a year, from what I've
yeah,
heard. He's
yeah.
and
That's
that's kind of
amazing.
how that's what he's learned. He's like, oh, I don't need to be burning out and expending all my energy making all the decisions and controlling everything. And his business has grown like almost 20x in just a couple of
Yeah,
years.
that's amazing. I can relate with that too, even recently as I've been working more on my health, as you know, and working with East West and losing even more of that additional weight I was still holding
Yeah.
on to. My clarity, like I got
Mm,
clear on this offering that I'm doing right now back into the home care space. And I think a lot of it I can attest to is that my thinking is more clear. When you're investing in your health and you all have been very instrumental in helping me get there, is that your brain operates at a whole new level, and you can think of I just see the moving parts a little bit better than I did,
Wow.
and so it's yeah, I think that is huge when you can, because you need that clarity in a business, and that's the first law I talk about in my book, is that entre clarity, is that is extremely important to get clear on what you want out of your business. So
Yeah,
yeah,
because that's the thing that most people don't realize is as a business owner, you can take your business in any different direction you want. And it sounds like freedom, but it's actually can be crippling because there's too many options. And so you can just get completely paralyzed by that. And so this is where I'm really excited for the workshops you've got coming up. And
yeah,
maybe you could talk about who those are for because I'm excited. I'll be one of the hopefully contributors of a great experience for people. But maybe tell us a little bit about those and then where people
yeah,
can pick up your book, Entre Thrive, and
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so the breakaway accelerator, that's a biking term, breakaway, we talked about it earlier. But these are for home care entrepreneurs initially, and we may expand. In fact, I'm sure we'll expand beyond that because the concepts are universal and timeless that we're going to be going over. But the focus of these workshops, or what I'm calling the 3-day immersion, these breakaway immersions. And our first one starts in September, both of them in Jackson. We have two in September, and then we're right now queuing one up, hopefully to be in Vegas in November, in line with another home care conference that's there.
mm,
But the focus is, again, the think, keep, then accelerate, and then the fourth we didn't really talk about is transform, like
mm,
transform their personal and professional lives. And then the fifth are the freedoms. And I give kudos to Dan for the four freedoms, is that's really where we want to get them to, is more freedom of time. We want them to take a month-long sabbatical if they can, which I've done a few times in the past, and they're amazing. And so getting them more time, more money, more
yeah.
time with their relationships, with their most important relationships, and then leaning into their purpose, is really the goal. And then from those 3-day immersions, then we'll continue to work with them and help them accelerate their growth over the next year and transform. That's just kind of the foundational, the first 3 days, and then we'll continue to work with them after that. Um,
Wow.
all aligned with many of the principles in the book. And so you mentioned the book. You can get the book if you go to Amazon. Obviously, look up Entre Thrive. You can order it there, or go to our website, entrethrive.com, and you can find the links there. We also have a resources page there that you can download some free tools. We have what's called the Entre Clarity Guide you can download there that will help you create your own guiding truths that I mentioned earlier, that just guide you through that process. Also, create your own breakaways. We have a breakaway tool there that's pretty awesome. So
Oh, cool. So where people can just see like you ask the right questions to help them think about what their next breakaway will be.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
cool. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Oh man, I got to
And
check
tie it
that out.
back to their guiding truths. Like, we don't want to break away if it doesn't align with what we want to be true about ourselves and what we want out of our lives.
Mm,
So,
yeah, because
yeah,
you'll know as soon as you break away, you're like, that was the wrong direction.
yeah, yeah. You went off route.
I know it was downhill, Aaron, but now you got to climb back up and then you got to climb up again, right?
Yeah. Well, if you find yourself at a buffet and you're supposed to be on the race, you're probably at the wrong spot.
Temporarily, it's the right thing, but not for the
Yeah,
long run.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, what a gift, I think, for all of you out there. I know many of you have mentors and you're in masterminds and groups. Aaron brings just a calming energy, and that's one thing I've appreciated since we met, is that you're just like a very grounded human being, and
Thank you.
there's no level of pretentiousness, there's no competitiveness. It's just like you're just there to serve and just be a really good human. And
Thank
the
you.
fact that you're
I feel the
willing,
same way about you, Reagan, honestly.
it's it's just because we're from Idaho. All
That's
the
right.
come from Idaho. I mean. Yeah, humble beginnings,
Yeah,
but
that's right. Moving pipe.
moving pipe will do it. It will make you a very, very good human who just appreciates everything about life when you're not moving pipe.
That's right.
Any day is going to be better than this one, I can
That
promise
is so
you.
true.
Yeah, but it's been a pleasure, and the fact that you have put your life's work back into, I mean, it's hard. Like curating events and holding the energy of a group is not easy. So it's a real gift that you're giving to people. So
I
check out
appreciate
Aaron.
that.
We've got links in the show notes, but you can go to entrethrive.com and learn all about Aaron and download his books. If you're in the home healthcare industry, definitely don't miss out on learning from Aaron. And then, especially as I think just healthcare industry in general, I've got a group called Go Wellness, and I'm like, I would love my group to learn from you at some stage. So we'll have to
Yeah.
talk offline about that. But Aaron, I really appreciate you being here. Any last words of wisdom or advice you'd like to share before we close up?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the this has been a great discussion. And yeah, I would just say that as an entrepreneur, we didn't really talk too much about this, but find time to create. Like we entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
that's something that really also enhances our well-being. I mean, I should have mentioned that earlier, but if you can create that space every week where you're going more of a deep dive into your creative genius as an
Mm.
entrepreneur, whether that's personal or professional, that's my happy place, really, as an entrepreneur. I love to create, and most entrepreneurs are that way. We're creators. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh man, that is brilliant advice. The Creative Act. Have you read that? The Rick Rubin.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, I just thought he nailed it, and I'm like, this is a book not for artists but for entrepreneurs, and
Yeah.
probably one of the most gifted books I've
Yeah.
gifted the
Mike
last.
Koenig's gave me that book.
Oh, did
So,
he? Okay,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
such a good book,
Yeah.
and but it's just to your point. It's like that's like because we're always pulling ideas no matter where we are, and that's what artists do. That's what Rick Rubin's like. You don't never know when the idea is going to land. And so we have all these ideas, and if you don't have time to actually suss out the ideas and see if they're going to land and stick, um, your brain just gets cluttered with all these ideas. So brilliant advice. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Cool.
Well, this has been fun. Thanks, Reagan.
It's been a pleasure. So, Aaron, check out entrethrive.com. And for those of you who love the show, make sure you give us a 5-star review and rating so that other people can find it and share this with your friends, family, and loved ones. And I will see you on the next show. Appreciate you guys. Bye bye.